Mike Heading here. I've got another little mini banjo lesson for you today. This time we're going to be talking about the major pentatonic scale. And this is a great little scale to work on beginning to improvise because it's got a bunch of really safe notes, and we're going to talk about that. But specifically what we're going to talk about in this lesson is a movable major pentatonic scale that once we learn the shape of it, we can move it around to any key we want. I'm going to show you a bunch of ways you can use this and how to play it, and again, where to use it, because that's the most important thing. Alright, here we go. Hope you enjoy. Alright, so first thing is let's find our major pentatonic scale down the neck, so using open strings. So it's pretty simple, it's just 5 notes. It's very similar to the regular major scale, except we're just going to leave 2 notes out. So let me show you the basics of it first. Let's start on our open 3rd string. So that's our G note, and then we're going to play the 2nd fret of the 3rd string, and then the open 2nd string, and then the open 1st string, and then the 2nd fret of the 1st string, and then the open 5th string. So it's pretty easy, it's just 5 notes. So open, 2, open, open, 2, open. So there's lots of ways to play that little scale on the neck, depending on how many open strings you want to use, how far up the neck you want to go this way. But let's just talk about some of the basic ways to play it, and then I'll show you a movable kind of shape that you can use to find this scale anywhere on the neck. So let me also say too, you could also use your open 4th string and the 2nd fret of the 4th string. So those are just the 2 lower notes of the scale. So our scale notes are G, A, B, D, E, G. So we're just grabbing those 2 lower notes, D and E, on the low 4th string. So you can add those lower notes too. So you get... So it's the 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, and 8 of the scale. Those are the numbers. So 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, and then 8 is your root. So we're just leaving out the 4th note and the 7th note. And the reason we're doing that is because those notes, while they are in the scale, you have to be a little bit more careful with those notes when you're improvising. It's easier to kind of get out of key or have it sound a little funky if you're playing with those 4th and 7th notes. Those tones of the scale are just a little trickier to play with, and you got to be a little careful when you use those. So basically what we're doing is we're just omitting those notes. So that's what's really nice about the major pentatonic scale, is it's basically 5 really safe notes. And you've probably used the major pentatonic scale already, whether you know it or not. A lot of basic Scruggs licks use, the major pentatonic scale, something like, something like that, where I'm using that 6th note, something like that. So all those little licks, you can think of those as kind of major pentatonic licks. I'm using those notes. So you can move around, mess around with those, use rolls, use single strings. I would start with just the open kind of way to play it first. And just get familiar with those notes and how they sound in relation to that open G chord. Okay, so that's the major pentatonic scale open. And you can try it different ways too, try it. Find different ways to play it. The more ways you can play it, the better, whether you're single stringing it or playing it melodic or using Scruggs licks. So it's a combination of knowing those notes and then listening to how they sound. So think a lot of those Scruggs licks. I mean, there's tons of them that use that, Something like that. Again, where you're using that 6th note. So those are all kind of major pentatonic style licks. Okay, so now let's go up the neck a little bit and find a movable way to play that scale. Because once we've got a closed position way to play it, so no open strings, we can move it around to whatever key we want. So we're going to start on the 3rd string. That's going to be our root note. We're going to play at the 12th fret. That's our G. And And I'm going to use my pinky, and I'll show you why in a second. So you're going to start there at the 12th fret of the 3rd string, and then you're going to put your second finger of your left hand, your middle finger on the 10th fret, and then your first finger on the 9th fret. So you got those 3 notes. So 12, 10, 9. So you can just practice moving those, doing a roll. Forward roll. You have to make sure you're not bending that note up with your pinky too. It's easy to get that note a little bit out of tune, so be careful. Hold your hand really still there. It's also a good way to check your intonation to see if you're in tune. Okay, so those are our first 3 notes. And then we're going to slide up. You're going to slide your second finger up to the 15th fret. You're basically going to stay in the same position. So you're right there, and then you're going to slide up to 15 and 14. And then I use my 3rd finger way up on the 17th fret of the 5th string. So you're going to have to fret the 5th string there. You could use your pinky as well, but I think it's a little trickier. So I use my 3rd finger there. Let's go backwards on those notes. You got to move quickly there. Shift. Let's go the other way. Let's do that a few times. You can do whatever roll you want. Just practice moving those around. And you can use your open 5th string if you need to too. So you could do... use your 5th string to move if you need to. It'll sound a little weird at first. It'd be nice to practice it without doing that, but if you need to do that at first, you can. You could use your 3rd finger here, but the problem is once you move it around, it gets to be a big stretch, especially when you go down here. So that's why I like using my pinky up here. Okay, so that's our movable scale. So 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 8, 6, 5, 3, 2, 1. So practice those, mix them around in any order. What I like about this movable scale too is that we've got 3 notes. And then we've got 3 notes up here. So once we've got 3 safe notes, I can do whatever roll I like. I can do a forward reverse roll. Forward roll. I could even do thumb, index, thumb, middle. So practice moving that around and trying different right hand notes. Think of these as positions, where you can put your hand and then try and make up some right hand stuff to see what notes you can come up with. Remember, these are just our potential notes. You don't have to just go straight up. You don't have to just go straight up and straight down. You can make a little pattern. Come up with your own little melody, and that's where you can start using that stuff to create and improvise a lick. Remember, we have really safe notes there, so all those notes are going to sound pretty safe over a G chord. And then what I would do is get used to landing on that 3rd string with as a ending notes. That's your root note. So you could do... Just practice ending on that 12th fret on the 3rd string, because that's going to give your lick kind of an ending spot. So if you go... And it doesn't matter, just get down to that 3rd string and end on that root note, and it'll sound like a finished lick. And this just takes some practice of, mixing your hand around in some different orders, and think of them as positions, remember. Okay, so a couple other things you can do with that is, one is when you're up here, you can also switch those 2 strings. So instead of playing that on the 5th string, you can grab that note with your pinky and then grab the 14th fret with your 1st finger. So you can basically flip those 2 around. I find when I do it this way, it's easier to do with my pinky personally, but you could do it with your 3rd finger too, but I don't know, for me that's a big stretch. So you can do it that way or this way. And then end down there. So let's practice moving that around. So this is our root note. So wherever we do that is our scale. So let's go down to the 7th fret. That'd be a D. to slide up. Practice how that sounds. So you can do it with your third finger too. What's really nice about this scale is you can create a lick in one key and then play the same lick over a different key. Like say you want to play something in D. You know, let's say, okay, I think that's a really cool little backup lick for whatever reason. That sounds kind of cool. And then I got to go to a G chord, and I'm like, okay, I want to do that same lick. So I can slide that whole thing up to the 12th fret. And I can do my same right hand roll, and I can play basically the same lick now over a G chord. So I think that's kind of cool. You know, you can get these kind of repeating lines that can give your backup a little more of a theme, or, you know, a recognizable melody that you can link onto. Okay, so let's try that D a few more times. Remember, our root note's on the 3rd string. And again, remember, there's lots of different ways to play these major pentatonic scales. This is just one movable pattern of many. I'll talk about some more in some future videos. We're going to focus on this one for this lesson, though. Okay, let's move that whole thing down to C. So that's why I use my pinky, because I think it gets to be a big stretch otherwise. Let's go all the way up. You can also use your pinky there if you need to. So let's go through our basic chords. So we got G, C, D, G, G, C, D. You know, so you can practice moving it around between the different shapes, and you're just using that one position. C, G, so that's, you know, you can use it through a basic chord progression like that. Another thing that works really good is you can use that over the relative minor. So if we got a G, the G major pentatonic will also work for our relative minor, which is our E minor. So let's say you want to do Foggy Mountain Breakdown, maybe up the neck. You know, something like that, where you're using this E minor. Something you could do is maybe use that major pentatonic scale. So maybe I'll go. So you can use that over the E minor chord. It's obviously, I don't have the backing band playing with me, so it's going to sound a little weird, but all those notes will work over an E minor chord as well. So that's a really cool kind of lick you can use. You know, maybe instead of sliding up to this high G, like you would in Scruggs style, you could use that major pentatonic scale. You know, something like that to do more of a melodic style break. The other thing you can do is kind of link that up with your Scruggs stuff. So maybe I slide up here to this, you know, my G chord in Scruggs style. If I use my second and pinky, I can either grab that 14th fret on the 5th string and start doing that roll. Or I could do it this way. So I could slide up there. Something like that. It's pretty easy to move that position from your up the neck Scruggs and then go into that major pentatonic scale. So I would try it in a bunch of different keys. The last thing that's really cool is you can do it for like a repeating lick. So let's say we got like Salt Creek in the B part, we go. You know, so I'm going from a G down to an F chord. And I kind of want that same repeating melody line, but I'm transferring it over the chords. So let's go up here and do it in G. Now I can slide that whole thing down 2 frets and I can do it in F. Now I can slide back up. That's a really cool way to kind of create, again, a similar melody over different chords. Is you can take that lick and that position and move it around. Slide it down, now you got F. So again, there's a lot of ways to do this song, or to do this scale, but I would start with kind of this movable one and get it under your fingers first, and then start working on some of the alternate ways to play that, and we'll talk about those in future videos. All right, good luck.